Monday, February 17th, 2026, 1:35 p.m. I was sitting in the front seat of my brother's car in shorts, a t-shirt, and my cheap but comfortable running shoes. My mind was racing, my heart rate was elevated, I was excited and nervous, and I was definitely in my head. It had been 13 years since I last did this. And that's the kind of time jump that feels heavier when you're middle-aged versus when you're in your 20s or in your early 30s. And now all the questions I'd been mulling in my head over and over would be answered. There was no turning back. Could I still do this over 2 days? Should I have prepped more physically? And would coming straight from winter, mind you, a mild Shreveport, Louisiana winter, less than 48 hours before, be too much of a shock to my system without any time to acclimate? One time when I was younger, I drank too much too early, and by 2 p.m., I was sleeping under a tree in full costume by the savannah. Another time, I ate some bad doubles at an overnight all-inclusive, and I had the shittins or the runs on Monday and Tuesday. This kind of business is not for the meek. I don't care if you're 20 years old, 50 years old, or 60 years old. And then also I was wrestling with the idea of if I had hung too much emotional weight onto the single event, hoping to shed the work, political, and social stress that had been building up in me in the almost decade and a half since the last time I played. As we pulled up to the stadium and I got out of the car and grabbed my costume, my anticipation hit its peak. My brother made a U-turn and went back home, leaving me to walk the rest of the way to St. Crispin's Anglican School, where our band's starting point was. I walked past other masqueraders, each in their stripped-down Monday costumes, and as I rounded the corner onto Arapita Avenue, the first booming waves of bass hit me, and my mind went quiet. I saw Kevin's head over the wall and we nodded at each other. In fact, it had only been a few weeks since I WhatsApped him and half-jokingly asked if he could get me a costume if I flew down in time. He'd said yes, because that's the kind of guy Kevin has always been, and it helped that he was one of the founders of the band that I was about to play in. I entered the yard, saying hello to the other revelers, all sitting quietly, patiently waiting for when the band would roll. And then I got some information from Kevin about how the day would go, and then sat down to wait myself. More revelers filed in ones and twos, either with their costume on or in their hands, each saying the customary, "Good afternoon," as they ducked under the shed from the sun. Finally, a middle-aged guy walked in and addressed the group. "Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Carnival. Stay sober, stay refreshed for tomorrow, and don't let the sun kill you." As I was typing this quote into my phone for this episode, I smiled, because after forever and a day, it was finally time. Carnival in Trinidad and Tobago, in its purest form, is many things. It's a time of revelry, an explosion of color, a connection to our past, a march toward our future, and a reaffirmation of our heritage. It's a time to dance, to eat, to drink, and be merry. And like many celebrations around the globe that lead up to the Christian season of Lent on Ash Wednesday, it represents a final cathartic explosion, a moment where we defiantly look inward and pull everything we have out of ourselves in one collective act. We lay everything out, our hopes, our dreams, our fears, vices, temptations, faults, triumphs, failures, camaraderie, anger, joy, sorrow, inspiration, artistry, and love into this intensely wonderful tapestry of sight and sound. As a proud Trinidadian, I can tell you that while a few people might disagree, our carnival is the best in the world, and people from all over the globe descend upon our Twin Island Republic every year to experience it. There are, of course, many carnival-type celebrations everywhere, including Louisiana's Mardi Gras, and I will explore the history of our carnival and comparisons to other celebrations in a later episode. Like many things, our carnival is evolving as well, pulled in different directions by the demands of shifting values, economic opportunities, and socio-political changes. But these discussions are for another time. Today, I'm here to talk about my personal experience this carnival season. I'm here to tell you what it means to me and why it is so deeply intertwined with who I am as a son of our Twin Island Republic. For the uninitiated, on Carnival Monday and Tuesday, bands hit the road all over the country, with the main proliferation happening in Port of Spain, which is our capital. There are many variations, but the band I played in was made up of the following key elements. 2 big trucks, which are essentially rolling boom boxes, each with their own DJ and hype man. There was a bar truck, which is literally a bar on a truck. There was also a truck with portable toilets and 2 large passenger vehicles, which we call maxi taxis for people who need a break from the heat. And then, of course, there were masqueraders in costume. Approximately 250 people spread out over 10 sections, each one with matching costumes, and 250 people is considered a medium band. Large bands during Trinidad Carnival can have over 7,000 people. Also, our band was more for mature masqueraders, people less interested in wearing bikinis and going shirtless, and more focused on the pageantry of a creative and artistic unifying theme. In my opinion, both of them have their place, but I am also of the opinion that pretty mass, bikinis and shirtlessness and thongs is a young person's game. Each band has a theme, and when done well, each section fits into the theme of the band's presentation for the year. The band I played in is called Kinetic, and the theme for this year was called You, the Masterpiece, which was a visual representation of the different elements that make up our personas as people, with the idea being that each of us has a unique mix of these elements that make up a single, complex, beautiful work of art. Those sections in order were innocence, love, trusting, happiness, black and white, caution, the blues, hatred, remembrance, art, and gratitude. And all of these elements make up the masterpiece of the individual and the collective that is humanity. And listen, I promise I haven't done the theme justice here, so I put a link to the band's website in the show notes. Please take a look. Each section has a leader, which are these larger, more elaborate costumes that represent the main themes. And finally, there's a king and a queen, which are huge and extremely elaborate constructions on wheels that are pulled by a single masquerader. On Carnival Monday, all of our band members wore the same costume, a fabric pullover with different color swatches representing a painter's palette. So the band would then travel slowly through the streets from 2 p.m., sneaking our way through Woodbrook and then into downtown Port-of-Spain proper before going across the first of 3 judging points in Independence Square in the heart of the city. It's then on to Piccadilly Street and through the neighborhoods where Carnival actually began. And then onto Charlotte Street and past the hospital where the trucks would all turn off their music so as not to disturb patients. And then onto Queen's Park Savannah, which is a huge park in Port of Spain and is also one of the world's largest roundabouts. Now, the Savannah stage is the high point of playing mass, but I'll tell you more about that later. Then after you come off the stage, it's back onto Tragate Road before going back to the starting point. Now, this journey on Monday takes as long as it takes. And this year it took us until 10:30 p.m. So that's 8.5 hours of dancing, chipping, driving, and sometimes waiting for the bottleneck of bands to ease at each judging point. Now, funnily, and hearkening back to the gentleman's proclamation when he walked in, as a 50-year-old man, my rules sort of mirrored his. And my rules for myself were no drinking alcohol before sunset, even though alcohol was free all day on the truck. Be selective of what food I ate so that I wouldn't get food poisoning again. Listen to my body. And finally, don't die. So Monday started off well. The weather was nice, and even though the sun came out, I had one of my hats on to give my face some shade. And to be honest, being on the road felt great, but it took me a while to really get into it. There's something really freeing about dancing in the streets, especially around carnival time, because people are watching you, but they're not really watching you, if that makes sense. I was taking in the sights and sounds and the smells of the food from the vendors. And at carnival time, you can get food from all types of restaurants and vendors all along the route, serving the types of staples that once again reflect the wonderful diversity of our country. Roti, doubles, gyros. Yes, we say gyros in Trinidad and not euros. Fried pies, bacon shark, fish and chips, chicken and chips, all kinds of chow, which is, chow is essentially like pickled fruits with pepper sauce and shadow benny or culantro and salt. Sometimes it's green mango or pineapple. And that is not to be confused with chow mein, which is one of our Chinese staples. And you could also get stuff like pao, which in America you call bao, corn soup, snow cones, chicken foot sauce, nuts, coconut water straight from the actual coconut, peanuts, pilau, KFC, and Subway. And yes, we love KFC and Subway in Trinidad. And as we made our way onto Park Street, close to where I grew up, that's when I finally started feeling like I was home. The thing is, I'd been away from Trinidad for a while, almost 3 years in fact, trying to get some perspective on the difficult time in our lives when those who raised us are getting older and passing away, and those who we are raising depend on us more heavily in the homes that we make for them. So it's this weird, difficult period that most middle-aged people will be able to relate to. And that was layered on top of how deeply I had thrown myself into work, running a public-facing nonprofit, serving on several boards of directors throughout the state of Louisiana, volunteering, doing community building, being the head of a household, raising a dog, shout out to Happy, and of course, starting a podcast. And in many ways, I came into Carnival 2026 feeling like I was adrift spiritually. And I was tethered only by the strength of my bonds with my wife and my daughter, my immediate family, my mom and my brothers, and my extended family, and of course, my friends. I knew I needed this. I needed it, but it still felt surreal. And admittedly, at the beginning of Carnival Monday, I was still answering text messages from work, but I quickly put that stuff off to the side to get into the spirit of things. And once I did, the rest of the day was like a dream filled with color and music and food and coconut water and regular water and LLB and laughter and dancing and waiting and diesel fumes and earplugs and blaring music and more dancing and chipping, which is the way we walk and dance at the same time. jumping and waving and turning to let people take pictures and videos of my costume, and being exhausted and resting and rehydrating and regrouping and more dancing and so on. And, we passed through neighborhoods where I saw old friends, shared nods and smiles with strangers, shook hands with a guy who thought I was somebody else, and spent time just waiting around for the big truck to keep moving forward to get us to our final destination. So by the time we got to the main stage in the Savannah on Monday, it was 9:30 at night, and the stands were practically empty. We were one of the last bands to cross the stage, but we didn't care. We almost ran onto the stage in the Savannah, and we danced and jumped and waved until we had to come off again. And by the time we got back to our home base, and Kevin dropped me home that night, it was almost 11 o'clock. And then I had to grab a shower, a quick bite to eat, hang out with my mom for a little bit, and then get ready to get back down there at 7:30 a.m. to roll at 8 a.m. Because after all, Monday was just the warm-up. Tuesday was going to be the main event. So I actually didn't fall asleep until the early hours of the next morning, and got about 4 hours of sleep before my alarm gently but firmly reminded me that the time for resting was over. And I was still adjusting to the time difference between Trinidad and Shreveport. And while 2 hours isn't that big of a time shift, I found that at 50 years old, it hits a little bit different. But Carnival Tuesday was calling, and I showered and I got dressed, grabbed my costume, and jumped back into my brother's car to head down to Woodbrook. And when I got there this time around, people were already in their costumes, or at least pieces of them. And these were the more elaborate section costumes rather than one single costume that we had worn on Monday. So there were colors everywhere, bright reds and purples and blues and yellows and whites. And people had on headpieces and chest pieces and flowing wings of painted fabric and billowy slacks and standards and staffs and wings and face paint, all mixed up together in the yard as we, this now bonded group of middle-aged people, some friends, some family, some strangers, we were all helping each other put on our respective costumes. There was no separation by class, creed, gender, race, or socioeconomic status. We were there for a collective purpose, and in that way, we were now all part of a bigger journey, a bigger mission to free ourselves individually and embrace fully our culture, our birthright, and our need to find release in the most pure and beautiful way. It was going to be a long day, so everyone was calm and cool, and we were pacing ourselves and conserving energy. So the section I played in is called Innocence, which is a predominantly white costume with long billowy pants, a chest piece, a headpiece, and a harness, which is essentially 2 large 6-foot fabric wings going straight up into the air. And each of the elements of my costume were hand-painted with silver, black, and white acrylic paint. It was gorgeous, and there are pictures of it in the links in the show notes. And then suddenly it started raining. So this morning shower rolled in, and then all of us were just debating about whether this was a good thing or not. Whether being cooler was worth having our costumes being soaked, and whether that was worth waking up with a cold on Ash Wednesday morning. But by the time the trucks rolled out, the rain had subsided anyway, and some people were still at the staging area getting ready, me being one of them. And so the trucks all left us, and we had to run behind the truck essentially to catch up. But this time I was battling the drag of the breeze on my wings and the weight of the costume. And so the band also fed us on Tuesday. So many of us had breakfast while we were chipping and dancing down the street. And I was sipping my coffee, getting my morning injection of caffeine as the bass was just pumping through my body. Overall, we made faster time to the first stage in Independence Square. and we were passing bystanders and masqueraders from other bands going in different directions. And the wait before the Independence Square stage was different this time. There was more energy in the air. It was more palpable. Instead of a single group dressed in the same costume, we each had on our individual costumes from our sections, and we lined up in the order of designer Sheldon Warner's narrative. We were indeed telling a story, but not with words. We were telling a story with color and movement, set to the music of some of the world's best soca artists. The King and the Queen went first, using the entire stage to showcase their intricate designs and artful constructions, and they were the tone setters for the rest of the band. So when we were beckoned forward, one section at a time, our section leaders went ahead of us, and we then each section by section told the story of you, the masterpiece. Now, any masquerader will tell you that crossing the stage is one of the highlights of the day. There's a chance to let go, to spread your arms in the air and dance and wave in front of a live audience and in front of the cameras that broadcast the event across the country and now across the globe. It's where friends and family will later on reference seeing you in your costume from the comfort of their homes, and it is as liberating as it is exhilarating. After the stage, I was back through the neighborhoods of Piccadilly Street, where I spent the time that we were bottlenecked, standing on the pavement, or what Americans call the sidewalk, catching up with my boy Kwesi, who had traveled with the band for most of the day, even though he wasn't a masquerader. And that's the thing about carnival bands. There's a magnetism to them because of the people playing in them, but also because of the sheer spectacle. Think of it as like a rolling party that everybody wants to be a part of. And even if you don't want to be a part of it, you want to see it go by. So kids would walk and chip along with us for a while before returning to their front gate. And people who were like standing or sitting would get up and dance as the music trucks filled their world with the songs of soca artists vying for the coveted Road March title, which is given to the performer with the song deemed most popular across Monday and Tuesday. And in that way, whether you're on the road or standing on the sideline, Carnival has a way of sweeping you up into the beautiful and measured chaos of its embrace. We stopped for lunch near the hospital and regrouped for our final push towards the main stage in the savannah, where the concrete path snaked around towards the grandstand. And this is the moment that we were all looking forward to. The one big final ramage on Trinidad's biggest stage. And so a group of neon-colored moco jumbies, which are men and women on stilts, went ahead of us, followed by a small band of Blue Devils, and we were just patiently waiting for our turn. Then they called us forward, and we danced up the gentle slope of the stage, right into the line of sight of the crane cam swooping down towards us, and we just let go. And it was, as it always is for me, perfect. The rest of the day was just a warm down, a trek back through Woodbrook, fighting off exhaustion and muscle cramps as the late afternoon sun continued to take its pound of flesh from me. I could feel the sunburn on my nose, the spasms in my quads, the literal salt crystals that the sweat left behind on my skin. But I didn't care. I kept dancing between sips of Powerade and bites of anything salty I could find. I was spent, but the mission was a success. I had left it all on the road and on the stage. My spirit, which had been suffocating under months and years of stress, felt lighter. I had been reset to a baseline of calm and peace. Over 2 days, my pedometer recorded almost 75,000 steps. We had traveled miles and miles together. This collection of people who I barely spoke to, other than the 2 bartenders who became my partners and also my literal lifeline in the hot February heat. And as the sun set and the festivities began to wind down, I already started feeling that slight emptiness, that tabanca, as we say in Trinidad, because I couldn't wait to do it all over again. For my regular listeners, I know this is a bit of a departure from my usual format, but I want to thank you for letting me share a really meaningful part of my culture with you. For the Trinis and those who know, I hope I have done it justice. For the uninitiated, I encourage you to look up Trinidad Carnival online, because this is merely a tiny personal slice of it. And even if my storytelling effort here was stronger, words cannot describe the breadth of what Carnival truly is. And I've only covered 2 days, and not the amazing and vibrant season leading up to it, which includes things like Panorama and Calypso Tents and Dimanche Gras and Juve. But Carnival really has to be seen to be believed. And it has to be experienced to be truly understood. So for the adventurous ones out there, or the expats who have been thinking about coming home to play, but have found reasons not to, just remember, next carnival season will be here before you know it, and you still have time to book your tickets. If you enjoyed what you've heard here, please like, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, and share. And as we say in Trinidad, we will talk later. Freshwater Yankee was produced by Jesse Stevenson Riley. Our contributing producers are David McMillan and Lauren Leon McMillan. Music was provided by Peter Sandy of Home Base Productions, and I am your host, Wendell Riley.